Hello viewers, welcome to Sakshi Digital. మనం ఈరోజు ఎవెట్ బన్సల్ స్పెషల్ గెస్ట్తో ఉన్నాం. సో చాలా మంది యుఎస్ వీసా ఆస్పిరెంట్స్ నిజంగా దానికి కొదవే లేదు, ఏళ్ళు గడుస్తున్నా కానీ అమెరికన్ డ్రీమ్స్ మాత్రం ఇంకా అలాగే ఉన్నాయని చెప్పొచ్చు. స్టూడెంట్స్ అవ్వచ్చు, లేకపోతే H1B హోల్డర్స్ అవ్వచ్చు, L1 వీసా సీకర్స్, వీళ్ళందరికీ కూడా కొన్ని కన్ఫ్యూజన్స్ ఉంటాయి, కొన్ని డౌట్స్ ఉంటాయి, కొన్ని మిత్స్ ఉంటాయి. వాటన్నిటిని క్లియర్ చేయడానికి మనతో ఇవాళ ఉన్నారు ఎవెట్ బన్సల్. అండ్ షీ వాజ్ అ వీసా ఆఫీసర్, ఆ తర్వాత యుఎస్ డిప్లొమాట్గా చేశారు, ఫెడరల్ గవర్నమెంట్లో 11 years వర్క్ చేశారు. ప్రస్తుతం యుడేటి అనే ఒక సంస్థకి ఫౌండర్గా ఉన్నారు. సో దీని ద్వారా ఆవిడ వీసా అప్లికెంట్స్కి ఉన్న కన్ఫ్యూజన్స్ కానీ, భయాలు కానీ, లేకపోతే భ్రమలు కానీ ఇవన్నీ తొలగించే ప్రయత్నం చేస్తున్నారు. షీ ఈజ్ విత్ us యాజ్ అ స్పెషల్ గెస్ట్. We will speak with her. Hello, how are you?
Great, how are you?
So pretty good to have you here in our studio.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. First of all, I would like to, know and explain my viewers about yourself. And could you just, tell us more about yourself and the journey from being a US diplomat to a founding Udeti visa?
Thank you so much. After 7 years of working with the Department of Homeland Security, I had the opportunity to work for the Department of State. I served in Embassy New Delhi and then Consulate General Mumbai for about 5 years, where I was a U.S. consular officer and adjudicated around 40,000 visas.
Wow.
Consular officers are under an immense pressure to adjudicate as many visas in 3.5 hours, generally about 120 per morning.
Okay.
So I had the opportunity to meet many Indians at my visa window from everywhere within India, and that was wonderful. I decided that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, actually inspired by many of the Indians I met at my window, their businesses, their family businesses. And so I started my own business in 2022 because I saw a great demand for visa interview preparation and more clarity on the visa application and interview process specifically.
Oh, wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, what is Udeti means? What does it?
It's a Sanskrit word and it means rise up and overcome.
Ah, okay. Yeah, so context to this, overcome from the fears of US visa.
Well, so in US consular language, when you overcome a refusal, that means the visa is approved. So it's about overcoming.
Mm-hmm.
So overcoming in the context, if you have a refusal, overcoming a refusal, and rising up and just rising up to the occasion of having that visa interview. So that's
that's a very important thing, what you just said, because many applicants, they get sometimes administration process, that takes a while, or that, they may need some more documents where, they would satisfy with the applicant's history or the profile. Okay. What exactly is that? And the second thing that you just said, that in particular time that, you would have to clear the visas, whether it is approvals or rejections, that's a tremendous, pressure. I would say that's a very challenging. What you would get the input? I'm not sure. I'm sure that, I'm not asking something which you cannot answer, your visa or consular, will he be happy, you refusing visas or accepting many number of visas? How it goes?
okay. So I'll answer your last question on the myth of quotas. We do not have quotas.
Okay.
At the consulate or the embassy anywhere. We have a quota of how many applicants we see that morning. Okay. I'm expected to adjudicate 120 visas. The number of approvals and denials, they're up to the applicant. If I have qualifying applicants, I will approve them. And if I don't have the qualifying applicants, then I will deny the visas. No quotas there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Would there be any justification, you get to answer anybody, above you, that, whether why did you give this visa or why did you not? Would that situation arise at any point of time?
Every consular officer is autonomous in their decision making, and we're trained.
Okay.
And we're given security clearances for the same and entrusted with this decision.
Okay.
However, we do have bosses, and if there's any question about an adjudication, then that is discussed between the consular officer and their boss. But their boss never says approve or do not approve this specific applicant. These are more rare circumstances in which further clarification from your supervisor is required.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. Okay. So let's, look at visa interview process. Can you provide an overview of the US visa applicant process, especially aspects where applicants make mistakes?
So the US application process, ustraveldocs.com has lots of frequently asked questions and the 8 steps to applying for a visa. Not very difficult. You have to gather your documents, choose the appropriate visa class, fill out your DS-160, which is the application, which a lot of applicants make mistakes on the DS-160, and we can discuss that a little bit more.
Okay.
And once they submit the DS-160, they pay their visa fee. And here in India, they book 2 appointments.
Okay.
One is the biometrics appointment, and one is the actual visa interview appointment.
Correct.
And then they appear for their visa interview. In
Correct.
the case of students, they also have to pay a service fee. This is a very general overview of the steps
Correct.
that can be found online.
Okay. But sometimes that I heard somewhere like, where they resort to the people like, whereas in their work as a third party or a people who are there to help the applicants like, to fill up the DS-160. Is that allowed?
It is allowed. There's no parameters in which both in working with travel agencies is not allowed. But in India, there's a wide variety of travel agencies, a wide variety of education vendors. And most applicants are taking the help, especially if they're students, of education in organizations in order to fill out the DS-160 and help them with their application. That's absolutely allowed. But what I would say is never go with somebody who is offering you fake documents, fake gap certificate documents, wanting you to lie on your application. If you're going for an education vendor, go with somebody who's accredited. There are multiple accreditation bodies, travel vendors, read their reviews and do your due diligence. So it's okay to take help, just be careful.
Okay. So what are the common mistakes, do these applicants make, during the visa interview process especially?
Sure. So we'll start with the DS-160, which is the application page. Make sure that it's free from errors and that if you've been previously refused, one common mistake is an applicant in the explanation box will write a couple paragraphs to the consular officer.
Okay.
So let's back step a little bit. When you go up to that visa window, the officer is just looking at that DS-160, that application page. So they are reading that explanation. And many applicants will write very long explanations about why they got refused the time before. But applicants don't know why they got refused the time before.
Okay.
Across India, the practice is once you're refused, you get a slip. It's a standard slip for everyone.
Correct.
214B did not demonstrate ties.
Correct.
It doesn't really tell you anything.
Okay.
So instead of writing that explanation, just write 214B and do not guess at why the visa officer has refused you, because a lot of applicants don't really know. That's one thing. Secondly, for your work history and your work duties, tell them your income, your full income, what you're actually making.
Okay.
Don't put less than what you're making, and be very specific about your work duties and don't overwrite. I know we're going into these fine point details and, maybe it seems a little bit tedious. However, getting a perfect DS-160, treating it like a resume, writing these points clearly can really help you. Because some officers just off the DS-160 can make that adjudication decision. Okay. So having it pristine and following some of these tips can really help. Obviously, put what countries you visited in the past in the DS-160 and your travel history to the United States, and be honest in the questions in the DS-160. So that's step number 1. And then when you approach the visa officer, be prepared, have some confidence, and we'll talk a little bit more, but depending on your visa class, that the questions will then
do visa
follow.
officer understands the state of the applicant? He might be nervous or may not look that confident, but he is a genuine candidate. Okay, visa officer, will he be what I'm asking, right? So judgmental, looking at his appearance, or will he go with the paperwork?
There are so much unconscious and conscious bias going into the visa interview. There's so much pressure on both the applicant and the visa officer, which is why there was demand for an agency to do visa interview preparation in the proper way. That's why that demand even existed. So the officer, of course, judges by appearance. They judge by the DS-160. We as officers have 20,000 interviews in our brain.
Correct.
Right. So we pull from that. As soon as you talk to me, I put you in a category. You're telling me that you do this job based on the history of my adjudications. Does your profile align with what you're saying.
Mhm.
So they become a little bit of lie detectors, but then they resort to the bank of information they have in the back of their brain
Okay.
about all these interviews they've done before. And they ascertain, does the DS-160 match with the applicant, match with how he looks and how he's speaking to me?
Mhm.
And generally, if everything matches up and you are deemed qualified, you get the visa. Now, if there are holes or questions and the applicant is not able to remedy or reconcile this discrepancy in the officer's mind, they generally get a 214B.
Yeah, but this is like a black and white. You just told me the scenario. But what about the gray area? Like I said, the applicant is perfect. He mentioned everything, properly, correct, but he's not confident.
Right.
He may look, nervous,
Mhm.
but, do visa officers have the judgment, like, looking at DSV, 160 or, looking at the person? I know it's kind of hypothetical, but yeah.
So
Because since you were there as a visa officer.
you have two scenarios where there's a borderline candidate who's on the edge of qualification.
Right.
And then in your scenario, you're saying there's an applicant that is qualified, but is not able to discuss it with the visa officer. So we know there's a lot of refusals in that category.
Okay.
That's why preparing for your visa interview, articulating your answers,
Mhm.
and I always say in a genuine and authentic way in which you're connecting with the visa officer. Look at the officer as if they're your colleague or your uncle,
Okay.
rather than this figure behind glass, and tell them why you want to go to the United States in a way that connects with them.
Mhm.
And in both scenarios, whether it's a borderline applicant or somebody who's qualified and not able to discuss it, then you are much more likely to get the visa in those scenarios.
Okay. How's this particular Udeti is helping in this kind of scenario onto the applicants?
This is kind of my dream applicant, somebody I can help really frame their answers to the visa officer.
Okay.
This is why the company was created.
Mhm.
You have a story, and I want to give you confidence, and I want to give you the parameters in which you can communicate that story
Mhm.
to the consular officer.
In the
And
right
if
way.
if you're a borderline applicant, maybe something is lacking within your finances, can we talk about your grades? Can we talk about your aspirations? How can we frame your finances in a more holistic way so that you go to the other side and you become a qualified applicant in the visa officer's mind?
Mhm.
Or if you're qualified, then that's a very easy job for me.
Correct.
Then I just have to tell you what your strengths are and help you frame them, and then you'll do just great at the visa window.
Wonderful. Okay. So citing F1 visa especially, there is a conception in the students, like, only a rich background, a family background students, like, whoever, can afford the fee, they only can go to US, versus people can, like, definitely take a loan from a friend or a relative, who is in US, they can still be a sponsors or, helping your education fee. Is that allowed? Visa officer can look into that in a right way, or will he say that only the people who can afford the fee structure in US, they only can go to the US?
Many applicants who are middle class or have 8 lakh, 10 lakh, 12 lakh annual income
Mhm.
are getting visas.
Mhm.
So I would not consider that
Okay.
to be only the rich are getting visas.
Okay. Okay.
Finances, the ability to finance your education and not misuse your visa, is a parameter which the consular officer looks at.
Okay.
So certainly that's being judged. Now, when you talk about people other than your immediate
Mhm.
family as sponsoring you, you need to be really articulate on why that individual has chosen to sponsor you.
Okay.
Because American culture, that is quite unusual.
Yes, but in Indian culture.
But in Indian culture,
Yes.
it's not as unusual.
Yes.
So if that's the scenario for you, connect with the consular officer and say, he's my uncle.
Okay.
But when I was young, he stood in line for me
Okay.
so that I can go to school, and he's so close to my mom. And he just happens to be
Okay.
a very well-off real estate broker. And so he's sponsoring my education. You're connecting with that consular officer. It's not impossible. Obviously, immediate family members are going to be looked at first,
Mhm.
but a distant sponsor can make the cut if you can explain it.
Okay. So what could be the challenges, when it comes to H1B applicants and L1, which is a jargon for, many people. that what exactly L1 and what are the criterias, like you would get L1 visa,
Right.
and the common mistakes in that particular category too.
Right. So our H-1B visas, U.S. employee
Yeah.
sponsors, and an L-1A and L-1B in which a U.S. company sponsors a employee that has worked in another country to transfer over to their office.
Okay.
So it's a transfer rather than any U.S. employer sponsoring you within the H-1B.
Okay.
Common mistakes. Well, you cannot get refused this visa. It can only be revoked.
Okay.
So you can be refused under serious ineligibilities, but for the common person, it's either a revocation of that visa or 221G processing at the window.
Okay.
Revocation is a very long process.
Okay.
It starts with 221G, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all 221G ends in a revocation.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
So 221G is administrative processing. It means that the consular officer needs more information.
Okay.
Either they need more information from you, they need more information from your end client, they need more information from your petitioner,
Okay.
or they need to look into something in your background, security or non-security related, in order to move forward with either deciding to approve your visa or revoking your visa.
Okay.
Most 221Gs do end up with an approval. The problem with 221G is that it puts the applicant and the employer in limbo.
Okay.
And it can actually cause the applicant to lose their job de facto because they're waiting so long for that 221G to be processed.
Okay.
So sometimes the applicant can help this process by being extra prepared at the visa window. For example, all H-1Bs that work for an end client need to have their end client letter.
All right.
You
Okay.
know, their LCA. Be prepared with W-2s and tax returns if they've been in the US before. This general level of preparation can help them. Also, L1A or H1Bs that can articulate their work duties, their work location, the products or services their employers have or they do, how many subsidiaries, how many end clients. This knowledge can help push them past the 221G. But sometimes if a petitioner or an end client has a history of fraud, the applicant may not be able to do anything.
Okay.
That's something that the officer may need to look into just because the petitioner and the end client have some history there. So there are some controllables and there are some things that they are not able to control.
Not in your hand. Yes.
Right.
Do you provide any assistance in that particular aspect? Especially, as you said that applicant may not be aware of the situation back there in US and what are the documents he's getting, for example, W-2s, the taxing.
Sure.
And how do you explain, how do you provide the assistance to the applicants?
I have a lot of H-1B B2C clients that book appointments with me.
Okay.
We go over their answers. We go over what they do. We go over their history. I tell them what documents they need to have at the visa window based on their particular profile so that they are just as ready as possible for that visa interview. And they just feel a lot more confident and comfortable at the window and they have all the proper documents when they face the visa interview.
But we may not know whether they are legit. That nobody can say, right?
That applicant is?
No, the documents or the paperwork, what he's getting from US, the what do you call employer or client.
What they provide to the consular officer, again, with the adjudicating experience. So I was H-1B lead. I saw a lot of H-1Bs at my visa window. Someone gave me an end client letter. I'm looking at the DS-160. I'm looking at this person's profile. Okay, project manager. Okay, he's making this much. I'm asking him questions about the company. Then I look at his end client letter. I can try to piece together whether this letter is following the flow or following the overall picture. And some are fraudulent. And so if they are fraudulent or something is not matching up, then 221G, we're going to look into this.
Wow.
So that's kind of how it works a little bit.
Okay. So what role does mock interview preparation, like you've been saying that mock interview preparation, how they help, whether is it right from the language or the body language or kind of answers and the confidence, how you gave them, what all you prepare the candidate, how you prepare them?
You provide me your profile, your DS-160. So I look at your DS-160. I make sure that there's no mistakes, that you're not over-explaining on the DS-160. We go over your strengths. We go over your itinerary in the United States. I ask you the questions that the consular officers would ask you. If there are things that don't make sense or need further clarifications, I say, this is not sounding well, or are you sure that, do you know what you want to do in the United States, or are you just saying something that you read online? So we structure the way their interview is. I clear up any doubts that they have. More than anything, they have confidence when they go to the visa window. They're not debating in their brain, should I say 2 weeks or should I say 3 weeks? I ask them, what is your itinerary in the US? Is that a realistic itinerary? Let's talk about the activities that you want to do. I know in Indian culture, you may just want to go with the flow, but an American really wants to hear a detailed itinerary.
Okay.
Maybe 10 states in 2 weeks is a little bit overambitious. Let's talk about what you actually want to do. You may think that the consular officer can connect with the fact that you're going for a housewarming, but the consular officer doesn't understand the value of a housewarming in the United States or any.
But where do you get a chance to explain that importance? Yes, it is important for us, like, to go a family person's housewarming.
Yes.
But do you get the time window, like where you can explain the visa officer?
Are you just going for the housewarming? Can we talk about the relatives that you're staying with? Can we talk about the other activities that you might be doing? Maybe this housewarming is not your sole purpose of going to the United States. Can we talk about a different type of travel itinerary? Because this may not sit well with the consular officer. So just flagging that for them.
Okay. Now coming to, your experience, drawing from that as a first generation immigrant, you emphasize the positive impact of international education. Yes. What are the chances, like, for a student who go from here, make a career there even today?
So about 75% of the world's H-1Bs are from India.
Okay.
So in terms of chances, they're doing it. Indians are there's Indian Americans, there's Indian H-1Bs.
Correct.
They're definitely succeeding in the United States. So if that student studies in the United States, they have opportunities for curricular practical training, depending on the university, OPT, STEM OPT, and eventually an H-1B based on their luck, their profile, and the way they go about job hunting, all these different factors. But there's definitely opportunities. Okay,
especially looking at the scenario right now, because world is in the verge of recession, that's what they say. And they're looking at the layoffs like that are happening today, layoffs. And what are the chances? Some students, like even today, I read in a newspaper, the article says that, students who want to come to US to pursue their masters, they have to rethink again because for like 2 or 3 more years, the situation is going to be the same and layoffs may continue. Do you want to add something to that?
I don't think I can predict what can happen in the next couple of years. I know it's been a little bit more difficult the last couple of years, and I'm not sure how that trend is going to continue for those students. There may not be a guarantee for an H-1B visa. Would CPT, OPT, STEM OPT, or that degree be enough for that student if that opportunity was not there? What other options do you have if the H-1B does not land? What would you want to do in your home country? What does that degree mean to you? To take in all those considerations. Yeah.
I understand. Yeah. So this personal question, like, would there be a difference between a student going for master's or for undergrad? Will there be any edge or advantage, like, for the students who opt to go there to?
So I'd have to double check the statistics, but last I checked, H-1Bs come from both undergrads and graduate programs. Traditionally, it's always mostly graduate students coming out of India.
Correct.
That trend is changing. That trend is changing. I think that's due to age, due to their work experience and the point they're at in their lives, maybe cost considerations and probably definitely cost considerations. But in terms of OPT or in terms of getting an H-1B visa, statistically, they both have an opportunity to land it.
Okay. And what advice would you give to individuals applying for visas like H-1B or travel visas in general?
So for your B1, B2 category, have a realistic itinerary in the United States. If you're visiting an H-1B son or daughter in the United States, have a copy of their visa ready. Be able to explain the length of stay in the US for that B1, B2 visa. And if you're able to sponsor the visa yourself, you can say that. So of course, if you're elderly parents visiting H-1B, it's okay if the son or daughter is sponsoring you. But if you have the means to sponsor yourself, you don't necessarily need an invite letter or somebody to sponsor you. I think that's a misconception. I'm going to say my friend is sponsoring me,
Okay.
but then the officer might think, do you not have the means to sponsor yourself? And many times the applicants do have the means to sponsor themselves. So make sure that you're communicating finances in a holistic way. Make sure that you're talking about ties. If you have multiple flats, you own your home. If you have a company, don't downplay, don't be humble. If you have multiple employees, don't just call yourself a manager if you're a director. Indians tend to be very humble. They don't give the full financial picture. And a lot of really well-off people end up getting rejected. They don't understand why. They assume the consular officer knows everything about their background or understands what they're saying, but they literally only have that minute with you. So just go ahead and tell them exactly the full financial picture if you're in that position.
Okay, that's very important. Yeah. So just before you mentioned that, over explanation, like, trying to give it to use a visa officer, is there any line drawn there, like, what all you should explain, or, where do you have to really hold yourself back?
You need to be able to give concrete finances in a succinct way. So if you have all your finances listed, then try to make them into shorter bullets. So write out all your strengths, write out everything you want to say, and then shrink it down and practice it and make sure that it's under a minute.
Okay.
So it's kind of a balancing act, but always lead with your strengths.
Okay.
Don't wait for the consular officer to ask you a specific question to present your strengths.
Okay.
Always lead with your strengths.
That's a very important question. And second thing that I would want to ask you, and give a clarity to the viewers or applicants, that what can be the gap in between, like, two appearances. Let's say that, I'm refused first time, and, some people get really, take it really hard, and they would just apply, a very available date, very nearest date rather. So is it good, or like, is there any time gap should be there for a visa officer to even consider?
It really depends.
Okay.
If you're a qualified applicant and the interview went awry, then maybe you can try again immediately. If perhaps you're young, you don't have many ties, then wait until you get some work experience.
Okay.
Maybe that you got married or some circumstances changed before you apply again.
Okay. So the circumstances change is a key point here. Okay. So that can be like, in a month or 2 months, or would there be a particular time?
It really
gap?
depends on the profile of the applicant. If the applicant is simply really not qualified and there's nothing they can do to change the consular officer's mind in terms of their level of income, what they own, what they do, their educational background, their profile is simply either borderline or they're simply not qualified. Taking the time to establish yourself in your home country, traveling to other countries, and then applying for a visa is a little bit more conservative and probably going to give you a better outcome. But if you are very qualified, or you know that you have ties, you know you have the financial means, something went wrong in your visa interview, you can go ahead and try again and lead with your strengths the next time, and hopefully you'll get a better outcome.
Wow. Okay. And you believe in the positive impact of immigration. How do you see this role of immigrants in contributing to the cultural and economic fabric of the United States? Because I'm asking this question, you yourself, you're from Palestine.
Yeah.
And, you went to US, like, when you were 13. Yes. And how was it then? And, how do you see the significance today when it comes to immigrants accustomed to, US system?
There's nothing more beautiful than immigrants in the United States and the diversity that it is in the United States. And regardless of the dividing politics that you see currently playing out, immigrants are the heart and soul. They make America. They are America. They're part of America. There's no separations between Americans and immigrants. We are all one, and we contribute to the beautiful tapestry that is American culture. Even in my neighborhood, I live in Naperville, Illinois. We have a large Indian community. Now, if you go during Holi, the entire field is filled with colors. There's hundreds of people there. Americans will walk by. They'll want to play with the colors. This is just a very small example of infusing culture into America. And Indians have amazing, beautiful values that they can teach Americans. And there are beautiful, amazing things about American culture that can be taught to any immigrant. Like I was taught so many things in America. I bring that back to my home country. I bring that back to India in my work. So immigration has always been a part of society, of our culture, of the world history. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. How easy or difficult it was for you, because you worked for federal government, you
Yes.
became a visa officer, then diplomat, and
Yeah.
now the entrepreneur.
How easy was it for me?
Or how difficult was it?
Yeah, I came to the United States as like a very true immigrant family. We did not have much.
With lots of faith and hopes in mind and heart, yes.
I don't know if I had any faith or hope or anything in mind. I was so young. I chugged along. I decided I wanted to do something global, something that can tie nations together. Diplomacy was the thing that I thought I could do. I pursued it. I happened to be in the position of working for the State Department, and I'm happy that I was able to be a civil servant for as long as I was. Entrepreneurship culture in India, I thought that I could use my creativity to help people in a different way.
So any final thoughts or messages you would like to share with our viewers?
There's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yep.
You can go on my YouTube channel, Udeti Visa.
Mhm.
It's not actually a plug. I have a lot of videos that give more tips on B1, B2, H1BLs in a more detailed way than we're able to cover today. Never get discouraged.
Mhm.
We always just have to be the change that we want to see in the world. That's why it was difficult for me to answer that question, because I don't want to dwell on the negativity. We can only impact the sphere that we live in.
Correct.
And I believe that we all have something beautiful to contribute to the world, and just to continue to contribute it, right?
How do you see that, and note, how do you see the potential or prospects, like, for students from here, like, who all wanting to go to US and dreaming to go and settle there?
I'm a Palestinian girl, right? Like, I came to the United States. I did not speak English. I became a US diplomat. So it's so hard to answer sometimes these questions, because you see the dividing politics. But then I'm a living...
Besides politics.
Besides
Yes.
politics, right? There are so many examples of individuals who are able to live out their dream in the United States and to succeed. And the benefit and infusion into education will make you a better person. It's going to be challenging. You may not have the community that you want to have, but just by taking that step and taking that chance, you become a different person. And so you can truly achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve, whether it's in politics, whether it's in education, whether it's in your home country, whether it's in the United States. Only good can come from embracing a different culture and being infused into a different education system. And what you do with it, what opportunities you get from it, that is all for you to decide.
Wonderful. Yeah. So lastly, that, what this Udeti means to you.
It's nice that I'm able to really help people.
Mhm.
It's really nice that I'm able to help them overcome the visa interview and move on to the next phase in their life. And so that visa interview doesn't hinder genuine people who just maybe get nervous or come up against a cultural barrier at the visa window.
Thank you. You're doing a great job. Thank you. And, I wish, like, many applicants or aspirants would take your help, a person like you, and, get through their dreams or, the process, what they find difficult. Thank you so much for being here. And, you answered many questions and cleared so many doubts. And we expect, like, this go continue. And, we would approach you for any future, doubts or any clarity that we would want in aspects, like, coming to this visa process. Thank you so much for being here once again.
That's very kind. Thank you
Yeah.
for having me.
సో యుఎస్ వీసాకి సంబంధించి F1 ఆర్ స్టూడెంట్ వీసా అవ్వచ్చు, H1 ఎంప్లాయీ వీసా అవ్వచ్చు, ఆర్ L1 ట్రాన్స్ఫర్స్ అవ్వచ్చు, వీటన్నిటి గురించి యూడేటీ అనే ఒక సంస్థతోటి అందరినీ కూడా ప్రిపేర్ చేసే ప్రయత్నం చేస్తున్నారు మన ఎవెట్ బన్సల్. షీ ఈస్ హియర్ ఇన్ ఇండియా. ఆంటర్ప్రినర్ గా ఇక్కడ ఎదిగారు, డిప్లొమాట్ గా పనిచేసి, యుఎస్ వీసా ఆఫీసర్ గా పనిచేసి, ఎగ్జాక్ట్ గా ఎక్కడ మన స్టూడెంట్స్ అవ్వచ్చు, లేకపోతే H1Bకి వెళ్తున్న వాళ్ళు అవ్వచ్చు, అప్లికెంట్స్ ఎక్కడ వాళ్ళకి హెసిటేషన్ ఉంటుంది, సో ఎక్కడ వాళ్ళు ఫెయిల్ అవుతున్నారు అనేది చాలా ప్రాపర్ గా ట్రైన్ చేస్తారని చెప్తున్నారు. హోప్ దిస్ ప్రోగ్రామ్ విల్ హెల్ప్ యూ to fill the applications and face the interview in consulate. Thank you for watching.